Welcome back to High Five, guys. You know I like building cutting boards, and I build several of them throughout the year, but I need a better way to clamp those together. So today, we're making an epic clamp station. Let's get started. All right, now to make our epic clamping station, we need a base. For this one, we're gonna use 5/8 inch thick plywood, something super sturdy. We got a 24 inch wide by 48 inch deep. We've got two 24 inch pieces of T-track. I've got a 24 inch by 34 inch piece of melamine. And then I've got 4 of these bar stocks. These are 36 inch punched aluminum. Now the goal today is we're gonna have our aluminum rails right onto the T-track so that we can adjust the width that we need to set them at. Whatever we're clamping, so maybe this red oak is gonna sit on top, very similar to how you would use a bar clamp, but the goal is gonna be to add 2 other pieces of this aluminum bar stock. So a lot of times when you're making cutting boards, especially thinner ones, you have to have cauls to them, and that's to keep all the wood even as that pressure is going this way. A lot of time when you're making a cutting board, you're pushing it this way and your wood wants to get off a little bit, especially at the ends. So we're gonna have built-in cauls with this. So the goal is to make it super adjustable, both width-wise and then obviously lengthwise. So what we gotta do first, I need to take everything off. I need to go over to the table saw and I need to cut out channels that we can put our T-track in. Once we get the T-track in, we're gonna glue down the melamine, and we're using melamine because it's gonna prevent the wood from sticking. If you just use your plywood, the glue is gonna stick onto that plywood and you're just gonna have gobs and gobs of dried glue, which is probably still gonna happen to some degree, but this will extend the life of it, and it's gonna look really, really cool. We'll route that in, we'll get the T-track installed, and then we can start working on the clamping system. Because we wanna make sure we clamp it square, but also it has to be adjustable. You may have a 1/2 inch thick piece of cutting board that you're gluing up, or boards that you're gluing up, all the way up to maybe 3 inches. That's probably the biggest that you're gonna do, but we're gonna give ourselves plenty of room and make this thing super versatile. So, to the table saw, we go. All right, now that we've got our channels cut out for our T-track, I'm gonna go and get the T-track in now, let it glue it up first, and then I'll screw it in, and then we'll add our melamine, because it doesn't go all the way between the two. It was designed that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and use a little bit of some super weld, and then I'll get it in place first. We'll come back, we'll screw it in, and then we'll start working on the melamine, which is gonna be a little different on how we attach it, but let's get this in first. All right, for our next step, or basically get the melamine on, which this is not just a thin piece, this is almost like a whiteboard thickness. So we're gonna use some contact cement. This is Weldwood contact cement. I'm gonna roll it on the board, and also here, I'm gonna let it dry or get tacky for about 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna set it on, I'll roll it in, and then I'll put weights on to hold it tight. So I'm just gonna pour this on, and then use my roller to get as much as I can. All right, now we've got a big hole drilled on the bottom side of our rail, and this is going to be big enough for us to get a bolt in, as well as a socket to tighten it. Because what we're going to do, once this sets on the T-track, we're going to be able to tighten it right here, but this is what's going to help us align. And the reason I'm doing that, I cannot find T-bolts longer than 3.5 inches. So if anyone knows where I can get a 5-inch T-bolt, please put it down in the comments. I'd love to be able to move that out here where I don't need this. However, what we'll do, we're gonna have 2 of those kind of sticking up, and then now we're gonna take a piece of really nice, maybe walnut, Paduke, something like that, and that's gonna give us our clamping zone. So we're gonna have 2 pieces of wood, and we're gonna put a screw clamp that's gonna move it out to tighten it. And then down here, we'll add another one, and that's just to keep the whole thing supported. But what we're gonna have to do, we're gonna have to find pieces of wood that's gonna match whatever we're clamping. So we may clamp something as small as 1/2 inch, but I'm gonna start with 3/4 because that's gonna be the most common size that's gonna get glued up. So I'm gonna do a 3/4 board, and it's got to be long enough to go all the way through. We're going to put in some screw inserts. That way we can bolt or take our bolt through. So I'll need one for the front and one for the back. That way the top clamp, when it comes down, it's not sitting on top of the clamping piece, it's sitting on top of the actual wood being clamped. So I'm gonna have extra pieces, but that's gonna be okay. I think that's gonna be the best bet for the long term. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me find some scrap wood somewhere that's about 24 inches, and we'll put some holes in it. All right, now that we've got it made, it's time to test this thing. But before we do that, I went ahead and made some room on the French cleat wall, and that way I've got a place to store this thing when I'm not using it, or I can even store it while clamping a piece of board or panel, and that's really, really cool. Now, if you're concerned with weight, this is gonna be a problem. It is heavy, and you're gonna have to muscle it up there. If you're not concerned with weight because you want really good even clamping pressure, this build is for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get it off the wall, get it on the bench, and we're gonna test a glue up. So I've got some old red oak that I used from offcuts of a cutting board many, many years ago. So I figured that'd be a really good test. It's probably 13 by 9 inches, something like that, so a very small cutting board, but it should show us if this works. So let's go. All right, now I want to pause for a second. I want to explain a couple things. Now you saw me take my step bit and drill out these bigger holes down this frame bar. And the reason for that is if we want to get a piece of 5/16 inch bolt, we could do that. Now there's a couple reasons for that. If I just take my wood that I'm gonna use to clamp, if I just had it on there, it's gonna give a little bit. But if I put a 5/16 inch bolt and then I put the piece of wood on and clamp that down, it's gonna hold it super tight. Now, initially, I just did it at the very top, but that's not gonna work. I wanted to give myself plenty of room so that I can move it. So if you want the most tight and pressure, you can move the end of your frame or your clamp, and that's what we did here. So we had to go through basically a full step bit. I doled that thing out, but I've got all these different holes. Now, another disclaimer. Man, when you're cutting this stainless steel, those little shards get everywhere, and I probably spent the majority of this project cleaning up metal shavings. So from the vacuum cleaning up to you saw me get the magnetic dishes to catch some of those things, that was a pain. And I have cleaned this floor at least 7 times, and I'll probably still got a couple more to go. So just food for thought, if you do cut this, it's gonna take a lot to clean up, but let's go. All right, so this is gonna be the red oak that we are going to glue up. Like I said, it's not very big. This is probably, okay, 10 by 8.5 is what the final dimension is gonna be. Now, the reason I'm using this, since this stuff hasn't been used in forever, it's got a lot of bowing in it. So if you guys have put together a cutting board, especially an end grain cutting board, the more layers you get, especially the thinner you go, the more warpage you're gonna have, and it's really imperative to get tight clamping pressure. I'm actually not worried about up and down as much as front to back, but this is what we're gonna use. So we're gonna line this up and figure out which holes can we use. We know we can use our front holes, and then probably that hole right there. So one, I've got this backwards. So this will go like that, because I've got the 4 holes at the front. So this is the hole that we're gonna use on the T-track. That's gonna adjust this way. And these holes are we're gonna use to put down our purple heart, which we have our threaded inserts in. So those are gonna go here, and we gotta figure out where those are gonna go. All right, we've got our first glue up, and there's a couple things I noticed that I'm probably going to change a little bit. I would like the T-nuts or the T-bolts on the ends to be a little longer, and I do have those. I just didn't use those. And once again, if you guys know where I can find 5-inch T-bolts, please let me know. The holes and the purple heart, I noticed when I was drilling, it seemed like they were going straight down. However, they were not. Some of them were going just slightly off skew, and I can tell this this hole right here, because when I'm tightening it up, it's actually going up a little bit. But I'm able to get really good pressure. I mean, I can't even barely turn these anymore, which is pretty awesome. The cauls I know work really well. The amount of even pressure top down right here, I know this thing is going to be relatively flat, the best you can for a cutting board or a panel. You always kind of have to even it out or plane it down, but I think this thing is awesome. So now that I've got this test on, I can go ahead and set it on the wall. We'll let it glue up for a few hours. We'll come back and check it, because I'd like to see how easy it is to take it apart. Did I get adequate pressure all the way through? And keep in mind, this red oak was really wonky. So if I can get a pretty good glue up, I'm gonna be happy, because even with normal clamps, I think this was gonna be an issue. So there we go. All right, now it's been a few hours. We've got our glue up ready to come out. So we're gonna go ahead and set it on the bench and see how easy it is to get everything out, how easy the workpiece comes off, and then how easy the cleanup's gonna be. So let's get it out. All right, we have no visible gaps at all in this red oak. It's pretty sturdy. It's definitely flat, which is really great, and that's the reason that I wanted the cauls. It looks pretty tight. There's no light, which is really, really awesome. Now, once I finish this actually be a pretty good piece of wood to use. Maybe we could turn this into a trivet or something like that, but that's actually pretty cool. Okay, so to talk about the good and the bad on this thing. The good, that was fantastic. The amount of pressure you're able to get front and back and on top is phenomenal. I think that's gonna really, really be crucial for some of the builds we have coming up soon. I also like that I can store it on the wall, and I can have a panel glue up for days if I need to. Now, I don't mass produce anything, so I don't need to have 2 or 3 of these things laying around. Now, there may be an issue where I go past capacity. Maybe that's 36 inches and beyond, and I wouldn't be able to use this, and I'd have to do it in 2 sections. I could see that happening. But for what I'm gonna use this for, I think this is gonna be really, really cool. I can glue up something, set it out of the way, and work on other projects. Now, this is overkill. I would not recommend this for most people. A, it's really, really big. You probably don't have enough space for it. B, it's heavy. And C, it's actually pretty expensive. These posts right here, these holed or punched holes as they're called, punched square tube, they're expensive. They're heavy. All the T-track to put in it, all the T-bolts, the knobs, this is not cheap by any means. And I use this really, really old piece of melamine, and it's pretty crappy, to be honest. I've already got some scrapes, some scratches, and even the razor blade as I'm cleaning it dug into it. So I've had this thing for a good decade and a half, so I knew it wasn't the best. But for this application, it's gonna be great. I don't care if it gets beat up, if it gets glued on. That's not what it's for. It's to make sure it's easy to get a good glue up, and that's what I'm looking for. So I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this build. It's an interesting build. It's probably not for everyone. And hey, the biggest thing is, I hope that you guys create something cool and effective and efficient in your shop. Make something that you think is gonna work in your shop, and that's what it's all about. Getting better, having more fun. Until next time, have a great day.